We'll call the meeting to order, or do I have to do this thing first?
It's in the agenda. After you
Okay.
approve the agenda.
We'll call the meeting to order at 6:04. Okay, roll call. Vicky? I believe we're
Yes.
live. Nick?
Here.
Christie's here. Alan's absent. John Zim is absent. Derek?
Here.
Terry?
Here.
Okay, we'll say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
And to
With liberty and justice for all. I'm sorry. I got distracted. Okay. It's not in mine.
approve of the agenda and then before public comment.
Okay. Okay, 4.0 approval of the agenda for August 12th, special school board meeting as presented. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Vicky,
Second. Nick.
second by Nick. Okay. Roll call vote. Vicky,
Yes.
Nick,
Yes.
Christie's yes, Alan absent, John Zimmer absent, Derek Cohen? Yes. Terry?
Yes.
Okay. Motion passes. Okay. I'll read this for the general process for remote school board meeting. Due to the current federal and state emergency declarations, the Minnesota directive to residents to stay at home, and guidance about limiting person-to-person contact due to the COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic. This meeting of the Waban-Ogama-Whiter School Board is being conducted in accordance with Minnesota Statute 13D.021, meetings by telephone or other electronic means. Due to the health pandemic, the school board determined that it is not feasible for at least one board member, the superintendent, or the school district's legal counsel to be physically present at the regular meeting location, and that it is not feasible for the public to attend this meeting at the regular meeting location due to the health pandemic. Persons may monitor this meeting from a remote location by going to https://www.youtube.com, see Waban live stream /live. This meeting is being recorded. Access the recording will be made available on the school district's website as soon as it is reasonably possible. You can also go to PublicComment at waban.k12.mn.us to submit a comment to the school board. School board members are reminded to mute their microphone or phone when they are not speaking. School board members wishing to speak should raise their hand, use the chat feature via meeting platform used Google Meets, then wait to be recognized by the chair. The chair will determine the order in which board member wishing to speak will be recognized. When recognized, the board member should unmute the microphone or speak and then mute their device. All votes will be conducted by roll call. Each school board member should wait until their name is called before voting. Okay. All right. I don't have any public comment. Did anybody else have any public comments? Okay. New business, discuss options for reopening school for fall 2021 school year and review plans. Lisa?
We had 3 different plans set out to you, and one of them is called Return to School Framework, and it's a draft. All of these plans will be working documents, even when they are considered in a final stage, since COVID is a fluid pandemic. But the framework is a document that we will be posting to the public within a couple of days once we get feedback from the board. But this is a document that we look at maybe a more of a summary document that'll be community-based. There's a reopening document that has much more detail about the plan. And then we have a shorter document that is just specific to the hybrid plan. So I'll start out with the framework. This one is an overview of the 3 different options we have. We have the scenario 1, which is traditional in-person. Scenario 2, hybrid, which is a mixture of in-person and distance learning. And scenario 3, distance learning. Now, if you remember last week, we had at our meeting, we looked at where we fell with our scores and our case rate. And we fall in that category of in-person learning and for our elementary schools and distance learning for our middle school and high school. So what that does for us as a district is we have an option to go into a more restrictive option for or model for learning, but not less restrictive. So what that does for us, and we talked last week at length about the hybrid model and what that does for us. The advantage for going into a hybrid model is it allows us to move more easily into either in-person or into distance learning, depending what happens with our case rate. Gives us more flexibility, and it allows us to do more planning. It gives our parents more leeway for planning and what's going to happen. It gives us more stability. It allows us that stability. The biggest concern is, as we don't know what's going to happen with our case rates, is as we start school and then we have to change right away. We know that COVID goes like this. I talked with Becker County today, nursing, and we are stable this week. We were not last week. And so we really want to try to offer our parents some stability. We want to offer our staff some stability. We want to put safety first, and we want to make sure that we're stable. There's some things that are unique to our community, and we want to make sure that we cover those as we make these decisions. And there's some things that we have choice about, and there's some things that are required. When we look at our options, when you have part of your district in a hybrid, as our middle school and high school, that's not a choice. That's where we are, and we need to stay there. So when your middle school and high school is there, the only option we could go from there is to go to distance learning. We don't have a choice to go back to in-person unless we do a consultation with MDE and they allow us to do that. And they're not going to do that at that point with the numbers we have. So our only choice with middle school and high school would be to go more restrictive for them, which would be going to distance learning. So right now, our choice would be with elementary would be to go more restrictive, which would be hybrid. And so we don't have a choice with middle school and high school unless it was to go more restrictive with distance. And at this point, we think it would be wise just to go hybrid across the board for that stability district-wide and to have the flexibility to go either way depending on what our caseload ends up being as we go forward. We've been told that in almost every single country that has reopened schools, cases increase, and to expect an increase of cases once schools start opening. I was in a training yesterday by the Department of Education and the Minnesota Association of Superintendents that they said that there's 2 countries that had a stable opening of schools, and that was Denmark and Norway. And what they did is they had staggered days, like we are proposing, the hybrid model, and they slowly introduced students, starting with their youngest grades. And they did it slow, they did it deliberate, and there were countries that had moderate cases, which would be similar to what we have. And so I think that we would want to make sure that our cases are moderate before we even start, implementing the hybrid model, which is, I think, where we're holding steady. And I feel comfortable going forward with a hybrid model and recommending that. And I think that when we talk to our public health, they are supporting that decision. As we go through the plan, are there questions about that? As we go through, and we'll come back to that, as we go through the plan, face coverings and practices to minimize transition to COVID. I'm not going to read the plan to you. And like I said, it will be posted publicly for people to take a look at. Face coverings is a mandate. We do not have a choice. So I know that we have some families on the spectrum of how they feel about that, and you may be hearing from them. But face coverings is a mandate, and we are requiring face masks for students and staff. I've gotten some questions, and I know some of you have. There are exemptions to that, and we certainly will work. Those are listed in the executive order. They will be listed in our detailed reopening manual, and we will work with that. Michelle's done a nice job as we've been ordering PPE to do a variety of PPE, some face shields, some that are age appropriate, some that have little cartoon characters. We'll be working with our children to make sure that there's a variety that we can continue to work and try to find ways that they're comfortable, and trying to make sure they have safe protective gear that may work for them. If not, we will find different ways to try to help them socially distance and try different ways to get them safe and still be in school as best we can. If there's just point blank refusal for some children, we may have to look at some other options for educational services, but we will work as best we can to help work with them. Reporting symptoms and exposure. You have to designate people at your site to be a contact person for confirmed cases, and that will be waiter, school nurse, and myself. We will work with having a site at each building. You have to have a designated quarantine site. As I said, we'll call those a T-bird nest, and so we have those rooms designated and a process designated. The health check-ins, taking the temperature and the procedures for that. Once again, those are requirements. Those are not choices districts make. So doing the health check-ins before they get on the bus and as they come into the building, those are requirements. So those procedures are laid out. Visitor protocols, reducing or eliminating visitors. Once again, those are requirements of the document. Transportation. When you have one part of your model in hybrid, the entire district has to follow the requirements of hybrid for transportation, and that becomes significant for our district. And I'm going to spend a little bit more time talking about this. And actually, Terry and I talked about this at length, having him be a bus driver in our district for years. I won't say how many, right, Terry? But with transportation, we have a large majority of our children that live out of town. And under the hybrid model, you can only have 50% capacity on the buses, and they have to be social distancing of 6 feet as best you can. What that ends up being on the buses is at least every other seat and one child per seat. If they are family members, we can cluster them together. What we did with trying to do summer school planning with transportation, even for just our August jumpstart, we had one bus with 21 children and our south route with 16 children. And we almost had to add a third route to follow those requirements. And we were able to get around that because we were able to cluster the families. But we were 1 or 2 children away of having to add a third route for just that number of students. Now, when you look at the number of children we have on our regular bus routes, we would be having some of our routes, most of our routes, going 3 or 4 times, trying to accommodate the children to come in. When we looked at adding the third route for summer, just to pick up 6 kids to accommodate the third route, it was an hour-long route because of the distance between our children. We have a large geographic area, and we have a lot of children on those buses. And that was even trying to account for knowing some of our parents and students would be driving themselves. So transportation is a significant issue when we need to be following the hybrid model on the bus for both our elementary and our secondary students. Did you want to speak to that, Terry, at all?
Down here. There I'm on. Yeah, over the years, all of our bus routes have usually been full to maximum when we come in. It seems like we was always fighting one way or the other on how we could reroute the routes and whatever, where we're going to really have some problems with this right now with all these kids out there, because our area is scattered out and there's a lot of kids out there. And like I say, we've had it in the past that the buses come in and they were plumb loaded already before this even come about. Now we have to split it in half, and we're going to have a big problem with that, trying to get everybody in on that route, on the one route, because of all the kids that's out there. Because like I say, even before, I mean, years and years and years, we've always been close to overloaded. And the bus has always been at max all the time. And if it wasn't for some of these kids that drove in once in a while, I mean, we would have been over max on a lot of that. But like I say, this has been going on for years, so we're going to have a problem with trying to split this in half to try to get half in and then see what we do with the other half. So I think that's going to be a big problem to work on right now.
Yep, and then like I said, it's even more than just the half, because it ends up being, if the capacity on the bus is in this 72, depending on the bus, 72 or 75, and then you take the social distancing, it gets down into that 18 kids on a bus. And so you look at that, that's normally up in the 72, then that's a lot of routes, a lot of trips that bus is going to have to take. So that's a significant issue for us and a barrier. Buildings and classroom use always have been divided for traffic. And so that we're able to accommodate, being able to, split. We've got some routes with different trafficking where one-way stairwell. In the Ogama, we have the different staggering of time to make sure that those those hallways are not crowded. So we're staggering time. In Waban, we are having some hallways are one-way hallways. So we're accommodating the hallway traffic in that way. We've had non-essential furniture removed to reduce clutter and spread children out in the classrooms. So we're being able to accommodate that, especially in the hybrid model. In Ogama, we are not being able to do that with the numbers we have in the space that we have. So in hybrid, we can do that. In person, we are not able to that. We do not have the space. In person, one of the challenges we have in Ogama is space and using the social distancing requirement. There's a fire marshal requirement for the space we're supposed to have per child. And when we went through and did that, we would need to have another section of kindergarten and another section of third grade. And able to accommodate that, we looked at using extra space in the building to spread out. And we looked at being able, maybe we look at renting another facility. For example, maybe we try to visit with the churches, we try to look at the community center. But then that requires adding additional staff. And we also have staff that is health compromised, that we are concerned that are not coming back to work. So it's not just hiring 1 or 2 staff. We're looking at hiring 3 or 4 teaching staff in addition to paras that are health compromised. That is really a difficult thing to do at this point in the year. And even if we had started it earlier in the year, a very difficult thing to do at this time. Once again, as you walk through the plan, cleaning and sanitizing, we have EPA approved disinfecting products, hand sanitizer. There'll be cleaning protocols during the day that follow the CDC guidelines, as well as deep cleaning on Fridays. That will, and then the weekend as well, that will be empty to help with that process. Every teacher will have the QT bottles in the room and microfiber rags for them to clean throughout the day. We have the schedules available, which I won't go through. You can see those. And then talks about the hybrid learning. Hybrid learning, we'll look at Group A, Monday and Wednesday. Group B, Tuesday and Thursday will be their in-person learning days, as the remote days will be opposite days. And then Friday will be those Google Classroom days, those days where they can hopefully be able to visit with one another. Yes.
Lisa, in the buildings and classroom use, are those kids going to be, they're not going to be going in between hours transferring from each classroom to classroom, is that correct?
Very good question. Did you want to speak to that, Eric and Lori?
Yeah, it certainly can. What we're planning on doing is making sure that we have our kids all in one area as much as possible, just so that there's no traffic. So it's going to be a little bit different in each building. I think Lori scheduled hers to where they do recess staggered. The lunches are going to be very not an impossible task, but a very planning task. Same thing with us up here, but with little movement as possible. If they do move, it'll be once or twice a day.
Yep, the idea is to have the teachers move to students as much as we possibly can, have meals delivered to students as much as we possibly can. We do know that we can have, with the social distancing, a couple of grades in the cafeterias, but we still want that movement limited as much as we can and keep cohorts together. So keep those groups together so that mixing and cross contamination is as little as possible. Thank you. As we move on, technology, we are looking at providing Chromebooks to anybody who needs them. We'll send out a registration form requesting who has their own devices and who needs them. We'll be asking what device that is because we want to make sure it's something that will run the applications that we are going to be utilizing to make sure there's no problems. And then making sure that the kids who need the Chromebooks can get them, and those who have their own that's a device that will work with what we're using. Then tribal consultation. After we make the decision, we'll be setting up some time to work with our tribal consultation, set that up to meet with our tribal leaders. Co-curricular activities, as you know, the Minnesota High School League has moved at least the activities that we have in our district down the road a bit to see what happens with COVID. Field trips are suspended until further notice, and that is not a district decision. That has been part of the plan, is that travel is not encouraged at this time and is not allowed. Clubs and activities are able to resume in-person and hybrid learning, but once again, we need to look at our transportation. Do we have the personnel to do that? And is that something that we need to do? That's something that we're still looking at. Do we have the staffing? Do we have the capability to do that at this time? And then student support and engagement. We want to take a look at making sure that we are partnering with our community partners as much as we can. So we have many meetings set up and are looking at making sure that we're partnering and working with our community partners. Special education, that'll be based on individual needs. The IEP goals will stay the same. 504 plans will stay the same, but they may be reconfigured based on the physical distancing plans. Childcare, under the hybrid plan and the distance learning plan, we will be providing tier 1 childcare, and that is for healthcare, public health officials, law enforcement, public safety, and first responders, for food and agriculture, judicial branch, National Guard, and educational school staff that are working in-person instruction for the critical care workers for childcare and school age care providers. And then we are working with regional support teams, which is Department of Health, Department of Education, Monoman Public Health, and the Waui Leadership Team and White Earth Health Services, as well as Becker County Health Services to make decisions about as we transition from one plan to the other plan and our back to school plan. Are there any questions about overall our plan? The one thing that I left out last time too is that any parent has a choice regardless of any plan that we are in to choose distance learning. And we provide all the services to them, food service, educational services, and so that is an option for any parent. So the plan that we're recommending tonight is the hybrid plan, as I explained earlier. We all want kids back in school face-to-face. The secondary, at this point, is not a choice unless we're going to go more restrictive. They're hybrid. The elementary, we had a choice to be in person or hybrid. I've explained why we think hybrid is a better choice at this time because of some of those other limitations: space, staffing, transportation. It really takes that in-person away as an option for us at this time because of those other limited resources and in our geographic area. So at this time, I think hybrid is the best option. But whether we were in distance learning, hybrid, or in-person, parents have a choice to choose distance learning. So when we send out that registration form, that will be a choice for parents to make. Are there questions? Anything we didn't cover? Questions for Eric or Lori?
So, I mean, one thing to bring up too for the parents that are watching is that we're going to keep evaluating this plan every couple weeks and make sure we're going down the right path. Cases go down, we can try to make plans for in person and kind of go from there. But right now, due to space, busing, multiple issues, in person, I don't think is even an option in Ogama.
Right. And Vicky, did you want to speak a little bit about being careful not to go too quick on the 2 weeks, but at least keeping it in the forefront that in person is an idea?
Yeah, like some of the things discussed is just that like opening up right now, well, first of all, if we do hybrid model, it keeps it more stable for all the kids in the district, and which I would think would be a benefit to families and to daycares. But then as time goes, we're going to get like a COVID number count every couple weeks. We'll get those updates. And as we see that plateau out, which is the goal, or even go down, you can start, well, I would think that they're going to lighten some of the restrictions and then you're able to open up. And the concept would be to open up slowly. So maybe go ahead and grab those pre-K or those kindergartners first and bring them back to school face-to-face while the rest of the district is staying hybrid model. And then as we continue to see that plateau or even decrease more, I would imagine we would just open up in sort of phases like that versus all or nothing, like going hybrid and then decide, now, we've been stable for 4 weeks, so we're going to open up all of elementary. That probably isn't the best case scenario.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that we talked about that makes a lot of sense is, we could go, if we go all or nothing, as we know, those numbers can change on us really quick. And I think, those are the things that while we're working with public health and while we're working with that regional support team, is I think one of the worst things that we can do to our children and to our families is to say, okay, let's go. The numbers look great. We got 2 good weeks. Let's make this decision and go, because that's what we all want. We want so badly to have our kids back in school, and that's what they need. I don't know that anybody's going to disagree that that's our best educational model. That's what we want for our kids. But if we jump on that bandwagon and then have to take it away 2 weeks later, that's probably the most damaging thing that we can do to our kids. And so I think that, we got to watch it. We got to be wise. And I think if we can make those small steps and make good decisions for kids and be thoughtful and be very strategic in opening slow. And I think that's what we've seen with other countries, that those that did it that way, it worked out very well for them. And I think that we will continue to take the guidance that we get from our public health officials, continue to follow through with that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess for me, that makes sense in that, we're using the public health information to act a little bit conservatively at this point, and that's fine. I think I support that. But like Vicki said, when it gets to a point in time where we're able to use that information, what public health is telling us on the other side of the coin as to when we can bring kids back, as long as we're responsive to that, we're able to plan, and hopefully everything goes well where we're not experiencing cases, we're not experiencing troubles, we can get them back here. That's our goal, and that needs to remain our goal, both as a board and an administration.
Agree.
We want to take over while
Let's see if we have any public comments.
my battery went dead.
And then too, Lisa, I assume when the kids start coming back, someone from public health is going to be here to educate these kids, talk to these kids, let them know the importance of what they need to be doing with the safety measures, explaining the levity of the situation, what it means to them and the rest of the kids in the district.
Yep, we've got White Earth Nursing is on contract with us, and they meet with us with our Monoman Public Health meetings. And so they will come and visit. So they were going to come, and they're going to come visit with staff also and help do some education and training with staff and help do some education and training with students also. Any other questions or?
I just had a parent ask me why we couldn't do longer days to accommodate for the childcare issue, maybe
The question was why we can do longer days?
or could we do longer days?
Could we do longer days? I think there was a question about could we do longer days that came in for public comment. We have an approved school calendar that we submit. And so there would be an option for us to take a look at changing the school calendar, if the board would choose to do that. At this point, I think that I don't know that longer days is real beneficial for learning. Our kids are usually pretty tired, especially our young kids are really tired at the end of the day. So I think that would be my short answer without knowing, what the reasoning behind the question was. So I think we already have a long school day. But for compared to most, I know there's one or two in the region that have longer than us, but we already do have a longer school day than most.
Okay, thank you. The only other question I had is going back to face coverings and practices to minimize transmission. Is the school supplying face masks, or are they giving them initially and then, what are they doing with those?
Yep, we purchased one face mask per every child, and then the Department of Education is providing face masks or face shields for every child. And then we ordered additional face shields for children as alternatives, as I talked about originally. So those that need an alternative option. Plus, we have disposable face shields. Have ordered multiple thousands of disposable face shields and masks. So we have lots of face covering options. The other question that I've seen on Facebook and has come across a few times is, can children wear their own that people have made or, that they've gotten on their own? And they can. We just ask that they be school appropriate. So anything that they would wear on a t-shirt or anything else, make sure it's school appropriate, themed.
Anybody have any questions?
I think maybe just for people at home, because I know this is one of my questions, back to the education model in the hybrid model. So A and B is sort of the concept. You'll go to school if you're in A Monday and Wednesday, and then you'll be expected to be online school Tuesdays and Thursdays, right? And then everybody goes to school on Friday via Google, right? Classroom?
Yes.
Okay, just to clarify that.
That's a good
Did
question.
you say only core? Oh, there'll be more than core classes. We will be doing specials.
I had another one come in. Where will childcare be since school will be in session for other students, and masks for Kickstart?
We're going to get our schedule made first before we determine. We will have to look at numbers on who's who's going to be distance learning and how many students we have on site, because we may have to split the childcare between the two buildings. So we're really going to have to see who signs up for tier 1 childcare, who's distance learning, who's going to sign up for hybrid, before we make those determinations. So we'll have to get the registration back first, because we really have to adhere to that social distancing and those requirements. So we may have it at both sites to make sure that we have space. So please, when you get your registration forms, fill them out and return them as soon as possible, because that will help us make those decisions and get that information back out to you as soon as we can.
I think there was a second part to that question. Were they asking about pre-K masks?
Yes, masks
So-
for pre-K.
For the little people?
Yep, we are going to try to encourage them to wear face coverings. And once again, we have a variety of things that they could wear. While it is not a requirement, we are going to try to encourage them to do that for their safety. So we may at some point say, it's working or not working and reassess that, but we are going to try to encourage them since our kindergartners are wearing them. So we will see how that goes. Did you want to add to that, Lori, or?
I was having a hard time getting the volume. Yes, I think we talked about, because our Kickstart program is part of our elementary building in Ogama, we'd like to see them be as unified as possible. And because we also have some staff members who might be at a higher risk, so it would be good for them to be practicing that if we're having the teachers come into the classroom. And again, like you mentioned, we might have to, take a look at that later on and reevaluate that piece of it, but we'd like to try to have continuity between the building.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I was reading a public comment on mine. Can you ask it again, Travis? We're trying to reduce some of the amount of paper and packet work, but it will be more of the live teaching and videos and recorded lessons. But yes, there will be projects that they work on. Less packet work, but more projects and lessons and videos. Eric, Lori, do you want to speak to that? Do you have anything to add to that?
I think one of the things to remember is that this is a continuous improvement thing. COVID is fluid, but academics is the highest ranking thing we have. So we'll continue to try and do a variety of things. We have our teachers right now working on what is called a flipped classroom mode of education. So that's something we're going to bring forth during our professional development once we get that fully vetted. So there's going to be a variety of things. We do not want this to be, neither Lori nor I want this to be worksheets and those kind of things. We want it to be more of an interactive procedure.
Okay. Thank you. Is there anything else? Travis, you got anything else for us out there?
I have a comment over here. So regarding the transportation issues, is it a possibility to approach the tribe to possibly utilize some of the busing there?
I'm not sure what they are doing. I haven't been privy to those conversations, so I'm not sure if they even have them available. But it's definitely something to ask.
I will put it on my list when we do our consultation.
Once again, there is the issue of the technology piece for the distance learning on that Friday. So do we have a number of students that we know that can't do that? And will we still be continuing to do the packet work on those days, or what is that?
We had the number down to being pretty small, and we have the broadband map of the students, our students that are impacted. We did buy those 120 smart spots. to try to address that. And as long, the only ones, if we bring the smart spots out, that's more than what we had left to cover. So that should cover most of our deficit, unless they don't have cell service. And then we'll try to, we're trying to work with them too on if they don't have internet coverage, how can we help them too? As well as hoping with White Earth's project, working with getting broadband covered with their Blandon project. So between those three things, I'm hoping that we will have everybody covered, but we will continue to work with that and continue to get that covered. As I told you, when we worked on it this spring, we made quite a bit of progress with families in getting that covered. If we don't, I guess to the rest of your question, if somebody doesn't in the meantime, then yes, we will make accommodations. But our goal is to try to get coverage for everybody.
What would it
Anything?
look like if, since we don't know, there's likely going to be kids that will not come, they will not be in attendance in school. What does that look like if we get a majority of kids in a certain grade that decide not to come? Are we able then to maximize time with the kids that are willing to come? Or do they still stay on a 2-day schedule, or what would happen there?
I guess we'll have to troubleshoot it, but I don't know if maximizing, because then we would have to take staff time to give that time to those distance learners. Whether somebody's on a distance learner or remote learning, or whether they're here, they deserve those resources. And so we would have more space. And so space would become a more available resource, not necessarily staff. And so we will have to assess those things as we go. And so it may make space more available. We still may have a staff issue. And so we will have to look at how people fill those out and troubleshoot. The goal is to get students in-person learning as soon as we can. But we also need to assess where staff need to go. And we are looking at options of, can staff be recording lessons and students that are remote learning access those? But we also know how important it is to have that engagement with a live teacher. And so we really need to look at that. That's one of the things we learned from this spring, that engagement was really important. And so we need to make sure that our distance learners are having engagement with, when we can, their peers, and with some teachers. That was very important. We need to make sure that they are successful. But good question. And we will need to really that's why you're constantly assessing. So when we make this decision and move, we're not done. This is going to be a continuous moving target for us to be trying to get to where we want to be and where we need to be. Our concept now is to have learning labs. And it would be, and even we would hope, and it depends how this works with childcare settings, but regardless of where they are in childcare settings, we would hope they would be able to access their teaching during the day. So when they are at Tier 1 childcare, we would hope that they would be able to be in a learning lab and be able to access their teachers and their lessons during the day. Now I say I hope, because the question a few minutes ago is, where's childcare going to happen based on how many people are on site and our facility availability. So, but our plan is at this point to have them in a learning lab where they can access teachers and learning during the day. Did I mention fill out those registration forms so we can plan for that?
Yeah, I believe communication with the district is very important. Let them know what you're going to do on your registration. Keep up-to-date contact information, if not a secondary contact, and because if your child is coming in and they are sick, or they present a temperature when they come in, or other symptoms, they have to be, sent home. And some parents don't leave the up-to-date contact information, so that leaves our staff and everybody else exposed. So what we need to do as a community also is to take some responsibility in what we have to help the school. It's not all about the school having to do this for you. You also have to come in and help us make this work, because without you, we can't make it work. I just want to stress that. So anything else?
That's a great point. And that goes for everybody. That's all of us. That's teachers, everybody. Just pick up the rope and help. Try and be part of the solution. We're going to have to get creative. There's a lot of barriers, and ideally we're going to start trending the right way. We're going to be able to get our kids back here. And there's going to have to be a lot of things presented that are going to have to come through and work for us to do that, but we're going to work to do it.
And we are next week going to meet with Mahubi and some of the childcare facilities that are connected with Mahubi, and going to try to do some planning and what we can do to support families and do some planning there, and going to try to work and see what we can do, work with White Earth to see if we can get Boys and Girls Club to work under a hybrid model and open up. And don't know if those things are possible, but once this decision is made, we can move forward with some of those plans and try to create some supports and some community partner supports. And, we've heard from you and what families need under this model, and we're going to try to work and help create some of those community partnerships to support. We all need to work together to make this work for everybody.
Thanks, Lisa. Yeah, I think all of us sitting here, out there, all agree that getting kids into school and back to school in a normalcy is a priority. And that's what we would love to have seen and love to have done, and given them their their associations and, that socialization. But it just isn't going to work right now. That doesn't mean it's not going to work in 2 weeks. That means it's not going to work in a month. I mean, there is some time that we have to be able to work with this working document, I should say. So that's all I'd really like to say. And thank you to the staff, to administration, to everybody who has worked so hard to make this work and to do this. We're not going to make everybody happy. We're not going to, there's always some decisions that could have been made better. And, but we're going to do the best we can. And that's what we're doing. So with that, if there's no other options or no other discussion.
I just
Terry?
add something, Christy. Yeah, I think the staff has really worked real hard at this. This is a new territory. It's something that's never been entered before. And I think, they're going to make mistakes. And we got to bear with that. And you learn from your mistakes. And I think, this is the best way that we could go. And the parents, I just hope they work with us too, because it's a new territory. It's something that's never been entered before. And I think that's where that's kind of sitting at. That's my feeling anyway. It's just the staff has really worked hard at this, and really, they did a lot of work at this, but it's new territory, period. And it's just to get the directions to go. And I hope the parents all try to help us out with it too.
I agree. Thank you, Terry. Thanks, Nick, Derek, Vicki, Al, and Johnny. So with that, do we have any other comments or anything ready to go? Derek? Nick? Okay. With that, I will call for the motion to approve resolution to adopt hybrid learning as the base learning model to open the 2021 school year. Motion by Derek,
Second.
second by Nick. Okay. Vicki, roll call vote. Vicki?
Yes.
Nick?
Yes.
Derek?
Yes.
Terry?
Yes.
Christy? Yes. Motion passes. So if they have some questions and things like that, you can always email or call the school and email Lisa or any of Lori or Eric with any questions that you have moving forward.
And I'm just going to remind, as we post these plans, that they will continue to be added to and changed as we continue to have meetings with public health. We still have plans, some teams that need to be created, and those meetings haven't been set up yet by Department of Ed and Department of Health. So we will continue to add to these plans and change these plans, but we do want to post them so you have some more specific information. So they will continue to say draft on them because they will continue to be updated. So,
Okay, public, last call for comments. Travis, got any? Alrighty, thank you. If that's all we have, motion to adjourn.
Motion, Nick?
Motion by Nick, second by
Second.
Derek. Vicky, roll call vote, Vicky?
Yes.
Nick?
Yes.
Kirsty's yes. Alan is absent. John is absent. Derek?
Yes.
Carrie?
Yes.
We are adjourned at 6:55. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.